Welcome to the Real Crime Diary Daily Dose of Crime. Today, we dive into a shocking case of infant death that left a community in disbelief. What happens when a caregiver's frustration turns deadly? In Lake Ariel, Pennsylvania, a seemingly ordinary day in November 2023 turned into a nightmare that would forever change the lives of a family and their community. This is a story of tragedy, justice, and the unthinkable consequences of a moment's frustration. On a chilly November day in 2023, the quiet town of Lake Ariel, Pennsylvania, was shaken to its core. A 3-month-old boy, whose life had barely begun, was rushed to Wayne Memorial Hospital in a desperate race against time. The situation was dire, and the air was thick with tension as medical staff worked tirelessly to save the infant's life. As the hours ticked by, the prognosis became increasingly grim. The baby boy, whose name has been withheld to protect the family's privacy, was showing signs of severe brain damage. The medical team, drawing on their years of experience, recognized a pattern they had seen far too often: the telltale signs of shaken baby syndrome. The infant's condition deteriorated rapidly, and he was quickly airlifted to Geisinger's Pediatric Intensive Care Unit in Danville. There, surrounded by state-of-the-art equipment and a team of specialized doctors, the fight for his life continued. But despite their best efforts, the unthinkable happened. On November 13th, just 3 days after being admitted, the baby was declared brain dead. The news sent shockwaves through the community. How could this happen? Who could be responsible for such a heinous act against an innocent child? As the story unfolded, it became clear that this was more than just a tragic accident. It was a crime that would leave lasting scars on all involved. At the center of this tragic case is Michael A. Crowell, a 26-year-old man from Lake Ariel. Crowell wasn't just a random stranger, but someone who had been living with the baby's family, reportedly working for them in exchange for room and board. This arrangement put him in a position of trust and responsibility, making the events that unfolded even more disturbing. On that fateful night in November, Crowell was the last person caring for the 3-month-old boy. What should have been a routine evening of childcare turned into a nightmare that would change multiple lives forever. During police questioning, Crowell's story began to unravel. He admitted to investigators that the baby had been fussy throughout the night, waking up multiple times. As the hours wore on, Crowell's frustration mounted. In a moment that he would surely come to regret, he grabbed the infant, picked him up, and shook him. The consequences of this action were immediate and severe. The baby's cries intensified, and Crowell, suddenly realizing the gravity of what he had done, became worried. It was then that he woke the baby's grandparents, setting in motion the chain of events that would lead to the discovery of the infant's critical condition. This admission from Crowell provides a chilling glimpse into how quickly a situation can escalate, and how devastating the results can be when caregivers lose control, even for a moment. The investigation into this tragic case began when Wayne County Children and Youth Services alerted the state police. As detectives delved deeper, a heartbreaking sequence of events began to unfold. The baby, just 3 months old, was living in a complex family situation. His home was shared not only with his father and grandparents, but also with Michael Crowell, a friend of the father who had been staying with the family. This living arrangement would prove crucial to understanding the circumstances surrounding the infant's death. What made the situation even more complicated was the absence of the baby's parents during this critical time. According to reports, the mother had moved out of state a month prior to the incident. Even more disturbing, the father hadn't been seen for several days leading up to the tragedy. As investigators pieced together the timeline, they discovered that on the night of November 9th to 10th, the baby had been particularly fussy. Crowell, who had been left in charge of the infant, became increasingly frustrated as the night wore on. It was during these early morning hours that the fatal incident occurred. The following morning, around 10:42 a.m., an emergency room nurse at Wayne Memorial Hospital contacted the police. The baby had been rushed in by ambulance, showing signs of severe trauma. The gravity of the situation became clear when the infant had to be life-flighted to Geisinger's Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. The legal proceedings in this case took an unexpected turn. Initially, Michael A. Crowell was charged with criminal homicide, a severe accusation that reflected the gravity of the infant's death. However, in a surprising development, Crowell later changed his plea to guilty of third-degree murder. This shift in legal strategy raised eyebrows in the courtroom and throughout the community. What led to this change? Was it a result of negotiations between the defense and prosecution, or did new evidence come to light? The case moved swiftly through the Wayne County Court of Common Pleas, a testament to the efficiency of the local justice system. This rapid progression is not always common in such serious cases, which often involve lengthy pre-trial procedures and delays. The speed at which this case was handled raises questions about the strength of the evidence against Crowell. Did the prosecution have an airtight case that prompted the guilty plea, or were there other factors at play? It's worth noting that plea bargains are common in our legal system, often resulting in reduced charges in exchange for a guilty plea. In this case, the plea to third-degree murder, while still a serious charge, is less severe than the initial criminal homicide charge. The wheels of justice turned swiftly in this case, culminating in a decisive ruling that would seal Michael Alexander Crowell's fate. In a courtroom thick with tension, the judge handed down a sentence that sent ripples through the community. 20 to 40 years in prison for third-degree murder. This wasn't just a number pulled out of thin air. The sentence reflects the gravity of Crowell's actions and the irreversible damage caused. A life was lost, a life that had barely begun. The court recognized that this wasn't just a tragedy for one family, but a blow to the entire community's sense of safety and trust. 20 to 40 years. That's potentially 4 decades behind bars, a stark reminder of how a moment of frustration can lead to a lifetime of consequences. It's a sentence that speaks volumes about how seriously our justice system takes crimes against the most vulnerable members of our society. But is it enough? Does any sentence truly compensate for the loss of an infant's life? These are the questions that will likely haunt the community of Lake Ariel for years to come. The tragic case of Michael Alexander Crowell and the innocent 3-month-old victim forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about childcare and caregiver responsibilities. It's a stark reminder of how fragile infant life truly is, and how a single moment of frustration can lead to irreversible consequences. This case raises critical questions about our approach to childcare. How can we better support caregivers, especially those who may not be the child's parents? What resources or training might have prevented this tragedy? It's clear that caring for an infant can be incredibly challenging, but it's crucial that we find ways to manage frustration that don't put children at risk. The responsibilities of caregivers cannot be overstated. When we take on the care of a child, we're accepting an enormous trust. This case serves as a grim reminder of why that trust is so important and why it must never be broken. Perhaps most chillingly, this case illustrates how quickly a life can be extinguished. In just a few moments of lost control, a baby's future was erased. It's a sobering thought that should give pause to anyone responsible for the care of a child. As a society, we must reflect on how we can prevent such tragedies. Whether through better education, support systems, or screening processes for caregivers, it's clear that changes need to be made. The cost of inaction is simply too high. As we wrap up today's episode, we're left with a haunting question. How can we prevent such heartbreaking tragedies in the future? The case of Michael Crowell and the innocent life lost serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of a moment's frustration. It challenges us to think critically about childcare, support systems for caregivers, and the importance of managing stress and anger. Your thoughts on this matter are invaluable, so please share them in the comments below. If you're interested in delving deeper into similar cases and understanding the complexities of crimes involving children, don't forget to check out the description for links to true crime books related to this case. Until next time, stay safe and stay informed. Power, Pleasure, and Pain. A study of abuse through time. This book provides a detailed examination of how sexual violence and power dynamics have manifested across different historical periods, from ancient civilizations to the modern era. It explores how figures in positions of power used their influence to manipulate and exploit others, showing that the patterns of abuse we see today have deep historical roots. Many people struggle to grasp why abuse of power, particularly sexual violence, persists in modern society. By connecting historical events with contemporary cases, the book offers crucial insights into why such behaviors remain prevalent. The book analyzes infamous cases such as those of Harvey Weinstein, R. Kelly, and Dominique Pellicotte, drawing parallels between them and historical figures. This section highlights how the systemic abuse seen in recent times is not a new phenomenon, but part of an ongoing cultural issue. Through the lens of these modern examples, readers will gain a better understanding of how institutions, wealth, and power have historically shielded perpetrators from justice, contributing to their ability to continue harming others. The book explores the philosophy of libertarianism, particularly through the works of Marquis de Sade, to explain the disturbing ways in which pleasure, power, and cruelty have been intertwined. This provides readers with a deeper philosophical context to interpret modern-day scandals. Unlike other studies that focus solely on historical or contemporary cases, this book uniquely blends both, offering a full spectrum of how abuse is tied to power dynamics. It stands out by making philosophical connections that help readers understand the deeper societal issues at play.